Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. After reading the news, I came to the conclusion that they don't use words. They're not wordsmiths. At least most aren't. Some are. But you can pretty much tell the difference between propagandized news and opinion just by using the language that they use. And I've noticed that propagandized news are they use generic terms to describe things. That might be a problem. There's an issue. This is corporate speak, where you downplay something. You try to minimize its importance. You cloud it with other terms. There's no such thing as war. It's a police action. That's one of the more well-known ways that this is done. The United States has pioneered it, and it has moved to other countries such as Australia and Germany and all this. They're using euphemistic terms. I see that. They teach that over in universities now. I don't think people realize how insidious this degradation of language has become. And so I'm going to use some words to describe what they mean in terms of a computer. Because after all, I just had a computer system meltdown. So let's use that, huh? When you say you have a problem with your computer, it can be anything, really. It could be hardware or it could be software. It could mean anything from you have no electricity in your house to a software program has a driver that's missing and you can't run it. That's a problem. You don't specify what the problem is. You just say it's a problem. That's poor communication because you're not being specific. In the business world, you say, well, you're in a meeting and you say, there's a problem, but we're on top of it. You want to give assurances that everything's under control, but there are problems of some nature. That's a very poor communication technique. Likewise, in a similar vein, there's issues. An issue may or may not be a problem, right? It could be that you are in the middle of composing a very, very long document and it takes up a lot of your time. That's an issue. Or it could mean that your computer is having software problems. Again, issues and problems are all very, very general and don't say much of anything, do they? Right? I really despise when people in business world come to me and say, well, there's an issue. And the next thing I say is, what is the issue? Spell it out. Well, I got everything under control. I say, no, what is the issue? And then after prodding these people, I find out that there's an issue that's beyond their ability to take care of themselves, but they don't want to show that they don't have that ability to me. And so they minimize the impact of it. I says, you just can't let it drag on. You have to deal with it when it starts showing its ugly head before it gets bad and out of control. Certainly nobody wants to say bad news, but yeah, you have to spell things out. Let's talk about other words, a little bit more specific words, right? How about breakdown? Well, my computer broke down. Well, that's a little bit more specific, right? A little bit more, but not much. I mean, you know that you have a problem and it's an issue, but it's centered to your computer. So you have a computer breakdown of some type, right? That's the way it works. So it's a little bit more specific, but not much, right? Related to that is the far more ominous meltdown. If you say your computer had a meltdown, ooh, that implies that it's not an easy fix. In fact, you might have to scrap the entire system entirely, right? If something had a meltdown. If a person has a meltdown, they become a different person, and you can never look at them in the same way. When a computer has a meltdown, you may have to buy new parts, new components, because things are no longer functional. If you say your car had a meltdown, well, that means that it's no longer drivable, doesn't it? Meltdown. It's more specific, it's dangerous. Let's look at a term called a disaster. A disaster is something bad that happens, but you can work around it. A bridge collapses. That's a disaster, but you can find other roads to take you to where you want to go. A plane crashes. Yeah, that's a disaster, but there's other planes. In the world of computers, a disaster is your mouse died. Your mouse is no longer functional, no longer works. That's a disaster. A disaster is something that is a bad thing that happened, but there are workarounds. There's a way that you can recover systems. It's a disaster. That differs from a fiasco. In a fiasco, you might have a document you've been working on for 4 months that suddenly is erased in a computer crash. That's a fiasco. A fiasco, it means that to recover from the event, from the fiasco, will require time, effort, and money. That is a fiasco. Your computer died. It was a fiasco. You have to replace the motherboard. It's a fiasco. But what's the difference between a fiasco and a catastrophe? A catastrophe. Well, a fiasco might be an element of the computer that dies, but a catastrophe is the entire computer is gone. A catastrophe is far worse than a fiasco. A fiasco, it might be a lot of effort for you to recover, but recover you will. A catastrophe is something you may not be able to recover from at all. So, in the world of computers, a fiasco might be the computer was in a house that burned down completely with all of your savings. Not only don't you have a house, a computer, and the files on it, but you don't have any savings or money or anything to buy a replacement computer. That's a catastrophe. In the world of soul, strength of character develops by the number of catastrophes you have in your life. Most people can count perhaps 3 catastrophes on their life. I've had 27. Like I said, life in Majestic was not easy. They say one thing and something totally different. Catastrophe. Bad stuff. So when I read the news, and the Chinese are saying one thing and the United States saying another thing, they're not coming to a unity of minds. Because in American speak, you use terms that can mean anything you want to. A rules-based order might be UN, or it can be I make the rules and you follow them. They say things with all kinds of funny terms. We believe in the Chinese one nation principle, but we also believe that we can go ahead and arm Taiwan and come to its defense if they want to. That's not the one party principle. So they're playing all these word games. And China says, you do that, it'll be a catastrophe. You do that, it'll be a catastrophe. And America's like, okay, catastrophe, there's levels of catastrophe, They're just using rhetoric. No, they're not. They're being absolutely direct. So let me tell you again what the word catastrophe means. A complete meltdown of your house with the destruction of the computer and all files in it, and the destruction of all your money so you can't obtain a replacement computer, and you'll be too busy to redo all your work again. That's a catastrophe. People who have never gone through a catastrophe don't know what that means. And that is my geopolitical lecture and opinion for today. The use of words and wordplay and the failure of diplomacy when people don't understand that talking frankly, speaking truthfully is fundamental to the world of diplomacy. If you have Biden come on over and talk to Xi Jinping and make all kinds of assurances and then the very next day do the absolute opposite, you no longer have diplomats. You have bullies. Lying, sniveling, cowardly bullies. And there will be consequences for that. I hope this video found you well and that you're going to take it as a humorous insight into modern society. In every way, and every possible way, I want you to do good. Be friends with your neighbors. Have a little garden. Gardening's fun. Grow some tomatoes, man. Good stuff. Ride a bicycle. And you know what? There's a story about that little ant. Worked really hard. Go ahead, be that ant. Get yourself a wood stove. Don't rely too much on the power grid, especially to heat your home. Unless, of course, you've got a gas well on your property. That's another story. But if I think it'd be a good idea to change a little bit of what you're doing, just like I've changed. I've changed. I'm no longer drinking cream in my coffee. I'm drinking it black. We all have to do some change. It's a way of growth. Don't you know? And with that, people, take care and know that I believe in you. I really do. I do.
迷雾偷走了颜色，想扮演格外深刻，寥寥几个人懂得。眼看着就要一个人做选择，割舍。假意的动了声色，却码在适当晚了，无辜这眼神什么？文明强撑着伪善的资格，名额。 情绪渐渐失控，他借口肆意放风，飞禽拆穿戳破这一秒的 久久窟窿。我自己笑得像一只飞蛾扑火山，侵蚀交火伴着我，清醒时刻平息着撕裂的躯壳，悬着聚散在拉扯，散一个成全自我谎话是坎坷，嘲笑我眼神焦灼，赞颂你熟悉的罪恶。假意他动了声色，却马在适当玩乐，无辜着掩饰什么？文明强撑着伪善的资格，名额。他情绪渐渐失控，他借口肆意放风，被情拆穿戳破这一秒的求救。扑火山，侵蚀交火伴着我，清醒时刻平息着撕裂的躯壳，悬着聚散在拉扯，散一个成全自我谎话是坎坷，嘲笑我眼神焦灼，赞颂你熟悉的罪恶。性格我自己笑得像一只飞蛾扑火山，侵蚀交火伴着我，清醒时刻平息着撕裂的躯壳，悬着